Whoa. I thought you got the drop on me there, fellas. But I guess not. Welcome to Slick Sixguns Network. Today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a review on the 1851 Navy. This one is made by Ubertis in Italy, and I'm going to be walking you through the advantages, disadvantages, some of the equipment you're going to need in order to shoot it, as well as the shooting capabilities and the cowboy action, the capabilities of this pistol during cowboy action. Alright, so first thing I'm going to talk about is the equipment you're going to need. You're going to need some type of powder flask, something that'll hold your powder, in other words. You're obviously going to need ammunition, so you're going to have 375 round balls. If you saw in my previous video the history of the 1851 Navy, you're going to need 36 caliber round balls. These ones are made by Hornady 375. And you're also going to need some type of powder measure. That's what this is called. Alright, I'll show you how that works. You're going to need some type of nipple wrench. Also some type of touch hole poker here that comes typically with the nipple wrench, just so that you can get a more accurate, consistent firing every time. You're going to need some caps. You're going to need some type of lubricant. I use Vaseline. It works for me. Sometimes some people use boar butter, other things like that. You're going to need some type of capper. I'll show you how that works here in a second. Alright. What I'm going to talk about now is, first off, let's go ahead and make sure that the weapons that I have on this table are actually clear and safe. Alright, so with this one, this is actually a Ruger New Vaquero. I brought it out here to do a comparison. I'm just going to do this the quick way. Alright, you can see that it isn't loaded. As for this one, I'm going to go ahead and it is unloaded. As you can see, no balls in the chamber, no nipples, no caps on the nipples here. Alright, so that one is ready to go. As soon as I am able to get the wedge in here. Okay. Alright. Okay, so that one's good to go. Alright, so the 1851 Navy. Alright, this is kind of what they would call a typical six gun, alright, because you can load 6 safely, and I'll show you how to do that here in a second. Alright, but this is something that I would say is what you would call kind of the one of the more historical firearms you could get. Alright, as far as advantages and disadvantages is concerned, this is definitely not what I say would consider your typical, if you're doing age-based categories with cowboy action, this is something that I wouldn't get for competitive reasons. I'd get this more for historical reasons. It's one of the lighter calibers that you can get, so as opposed to a 44, you're shooting a 36, so it's a lighter load as far as black powder is concerned. The cleanup of it is obviously going to be more of a disadvantage because you're dealing with black powder. I don't think it's typically that hard, but for some people who aren't used to shooting black powder, this is something that if you're going to get into shooting this competitively and you're going to be shooting this a lot, you're going to have to work on doing a lot of maintenance with your firearms. Alright, so loading this is going to take a lot longer as well than something like this, the Ruger New Vaquero, or something similar to the 1873 Colt Single Action Army, where you just have to pop open the loading gate, spin the cylinder, load your rounds in, and then obviously cock the hammer and fire, and you're good to go. Alright, this one you're going to have to actually drop the loading lever, you're going to have to load powder in, you're going to have to push the ball in, you're going to have to cap it, and then by that time it's ready to fire. And when you're shooting cowboy action, you're going to have to use 2 of these anyway. Sometimes in some matches I know that they'll allow shooters to either borrow someone else's firearm, or they'll actually allow you to shoot only one if you can just bring one to the table, so to speak. Alright, so in my experience shooting this weapon, I honestly can say that as far as historically, this is a great weapon to have. I get a lot of questions on it. People obviously ask me, well, you know, what do you prefer, an Army or a Navy? And to that, I'll just simply say that, you know, it depends on how much bang you really want. With black powder, you obviously are going to be loading your own loads. I only use 15 grains for a target load. For cowboy action, I like to kick it down, but if I want to, you know, show a little bit more boom, I'm going to probably kick it up to maybe 20 grains, okay? But nothing much more than that, because I don't want it to have any risk of injuring myself, okay? So, this is a very, it's a 7.5-inch barrel. I would say that accuracy-wise, it's typically just fine. More accuracy depends more on the shooter anyway than anything else. Longer barrel, you're going to have a higher velocity, so I'd say out to about 25 to 50 yards, this thing is very accurate, in my opinion, for a pistol. Okay, even if you're shooting round balls for conical bullets, it might be even more accurate for you, but I'm just going to shoot round balls for this video. Alright, so as well as the handling capability of this weapon, it's very natural in the hand. It feels like a very natural shooter right there. Okay, it's not heavy, much like something like the Colt Walker. Alright, even something like the Ruger New Vaquero is actually a little bit heavier than this, even though the barrel is a little bit longer. The balance on this weapon is very good. I would say that it's naturally points to the shooter, and as far as pulling it out of your holsters, well, it's going to depend on what kind of holsters you have, but I found that this is actually easier to pull out of the holster, considering that the cylinder isn't as wide as some of the bigger caliber revolvers out there in cartridge guns. I think the lack of a top strap kind of helps as well. And also the fact that you don't have any ejection, any side ejection here. You don't have much of a room for grab. So pulling this thing out of a holster is actually really awesome, and it feels very natural. Because of the longer barrel, I recommend that you do it in some kind of a cross-draw configuration. You can do it on a strong side, no problem with that there. But overall, I think it's a great looking weapon. The looks of it, you have a case color hardened hammer right here, and then as well as a frame. The barrel is standard blued with the Navy. You obviously have the Naval Battle inscription on the cylinder. You also have a case color hardening loading lever here. with a brass back strap, and then you have your standard wood grips, okay, which are actually very nice. The finish of these wood grips fit well with the strap here. They don't stick out sometimes like the other revolvers. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about the loading process here. Alright, so the first thing you're going to do is you're actually going to put this weapon on half cock. Right here. Make sure that the cylinder spins freely. Then you're also going to need your lubricant. Make sure that you have that readily accessible. I highly recommend that you guys have some type of knife to help you with that, to add your lubricant onto. And then this is where your powder measure and your powder flask are going to come in handy. Alright, so to do this, we're just going to make sure that we have 15 grains of black powder. Alright, so I'm going to set my powder flask to that. I'm going to make sure that I have my round balls easily accessible before I actually do something like that. I'm going to go ahead and load all 6 cylinders so that I can show you how that works. Alright. Ram it home. Main reason why I'm doing this is because the 375 round ball here in this weapon doesn't necessarily fit. What I mean by that is it does not fit because it is not a tight squeeze into the cylinder there. So the ball itself is a little bit loose. How I know that is that I would normally get some type of... It's time for some black powder fun. Let's go ahead and light it up with all 6. Here we go. So I just wanted to say that this weapon is very affordable. So I know that a lot of 6-guns out there are going to run you a little bit of a higher bill, but in my experience, cap and ball revolvers run on the cheaper end just because not a whole lot of people want them as much, except for collectors and cowboy action shooters and anyone who's just interested in picking up a cap and ball revolver. This one I picked up for about $250. Okay, that I would say is probably about your average cost of these. They can be upwards, especially if they got special engraving or something, but they're very cheap, and you know, cowboy action calls for at least a rifle, 2 pistols, and a shotgun, and wherever you can save money, it's always a good thing. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you are picking a pistol, whether you pick the 1851 Navy or a cartridge gun. Folks, okay, well, we just did some shooting with this pistol, and I have to say I'm actually very impressed with it. That was very reliable shooting. Sometimes when you load it, the caps don't always seat, so sometimes it's best to use a wooden dowel or something to push the caps onto the nipples. But it actually shot really well. Very reliable. You know, I like to think that's partially because of the shooter, but you know, that's just me. Anyway, this thing is going to obviously have to get cleaned now because I fired it. One other thing I forgot to mention is that the sights, okay, so on 73 single action armies or replicas thereof, they have a top strap which typically has the rear sight built into it, but the rear sight is actually built into the hammer on this one. So once you cock the hammer, you're going to have to look look from the top of the hammer, find your front sight post, and then acquire your target from there. But if you're really, really close to your target, there's no need to use your rear sight. Just use your front sight and you should be pretty much good. This weapon shoots a little high, so I had to aim a little bit lower, but we weren't really going for accuracy. But in my experience, shooting this thing out to 25 to 50 yards, you'll hit your target as long as you have a pretty decent sight picture, even if you're aiming right on, at least with this one. I really like it that way. And if you really like this video, feel free to hit like and subscribe, and visit my Facebook page, Slick Sixguns Network. And by all means, you all have a nice day.